The shocking and untold tale of Queen Victoria's nurse who turned serial killer. Nurse Mary Ann committed a horrifying act, slaughtering 6 children, including her own son, William, while previously having been entrusted with the care of Queen Victoria's sons. The Esher Murderess case captured the attention of Britain and garnered global headlines. On the morning of the 10th of June 1854, Henry Woolgar stumbled upon a gruesome scene as he noticed a blood-soaked pillow hanging from an upstairs window of a cottage in Esher. Investigating further, he discovered Mary Ann Brough, her hair disheveled, body covered in blood, and throat slashed. The shocking discovery unfolded as more neighbours gathered, revealing the lifeless body of Mary Ann's children with slashed throats. The horror intensified when it was revealed that Mary Ann, who had miraculously survived her self-inflicted throat slashing, confessed to systematically killing her own children with a razor blade. The Esher Murderess, once entrusted with the care of the Prince of Wales, had committed unspeakable acts. Unlike infamous Victorian murderers like Mary Ann Cotton or Amelia Dyer, Mary Ann Brough, the royal wet nurse turned serial killer, has faded from historical accounts. Despite being the most notorious killer of her time, there are no biographies or TV series dedicated to her chilling story. Mary Ann's dark journey began as a royal wet nurse in 1841, summoned by Queen Victoria herself during childbirth. The Queen, unwilling to breastfeed, handed over her baby Bertie, the Prince of Wales, to Mary Ann's care, unknowingly placing the future heir in the hands of a twisted murderer. Victoria, much like many affluent women in the 1840s, harboured an intense aversion to breastfeeding. The royal wet nurse position, which offered an appealing salary, attracted numerous applicants, with Mary Ann securing the role for the duration of 8 months and earning £1,000, equivalent to approximately £50,000 in today's currency. Mary Ann likely obtained the position due to her husband George's employment as the groundsman at Claremont House, one of Victoria's favourite royal estates near Esher. The trust placed in her as the spouse of a reliable servant contributed to her selection. Despite giving birth to her eldest daughter, Mary, 8 years prior, Mary Ann had experienced several child losses. While it is assumed she miscarried, the possibility exists that her children succumbed to a lack of maternal milk, given that she was compensated to provide it to wealthier mothers' infants. The emotional toll of nurturing another woman's healthy baby with milk intended for her deceased children remains a matter of speculation. Initially pleased with Mary Ann, Victoria considered her a simple, decent countrywoman. Mary Ann excelled in her duties, nurturing Bertie into a robust, healthy baby, although Victoria, grappling with postnatal depression, found him unattractive and too frightful. Having failed to form a bond with Bertie, Victoria largely disregarded him, and Mary Ann likely spent more time with him during his early months. However, for undisclosed reasons, one newspaper later suggested that she was a drinker, while another claimed disobedience. Mary Ann was dismissed after 8 months. Victoria had likely forgotten about her until more than a decade later when she read the shocking news in the morning paper. In her diary entry on the 13th of June, Victoria expressed her horror at the tragedy that unfolded in Esher, where Mrs. Brough, Bertie's former wet nurse, had murdered her 6 children. Victoria described Mary Ann as a depraved woman, ill-tempered and stupid demeanour during her time in their house. Following her dismissal, Mary Ann settled in a cottage in West Esher with George. She became a loving and attentive mother to her 5 subsequent children. However, after the birth of her 7th child, George, in September 1852, Mary Ann experienced what appeared to be a stroke. a surgeon who provided court testimony, noted paralysis on her left side, slurred speech, facial distortion, and symptoms of a disordered brain, including severe headaches, a disorientated sensation in her head, and frequent nosebleeds, despite medical intervention. The tragic sequence of events began when George, Mary Ann's husband and described as a hard-working, sober man, started suspecting his wife of infidelity. Hiring an amateur detective to trail her, he obtained evidence suggesting that she travelled to London for an illicit rendezvous with a married man. Convinced of her unfaithfulness, George abruptly left Mary Ann on Tuesday the 6th of June, 1854, with intentions of seeking custody of their children. The blow devastated Mary Ann, and George planned to present her with a legal agreement for her to sign on that Saturday. Adding to her distress, the children contracted measles, a potentially fatal disease. Mary Ann, deprived of sleep, nursed them through several restless nights. On Wednesday, she sought relief from headache from Mr. Izzard, but he declined, citing the familiarity of her symptoms and advising her not to overexert herself. By Friday, June the 9th, tormented by intense head pain, Mary Ann returned to seek medication from Mr. Izzard, who was unavailable. In despair, she returned home to her ailing children, collapsing into a chair to rest. At 9 p.m, Georgie, still recovering from measles, called for her to come to bed, followed by cries from her other children persisting until midnight. Unable to sleep, overwhelmed by exhaustion, and fearing the loss of her children, Mary Ann succumbed to a breaking point. In a later statement to Superintendent Middlecombe, she recounted a moment of derangement. "There was something like a cloud over my eyes. I thought I would go down, get a knife, and cut my throat. Hindered by darkness, she found her husband's razor in his room. Yielding it in an irrational compulsion, she proceeded to slit her children's throat, one by one." She confessed, "I went to Georgie and cut her first. I did not look at her. I then came to Carrie and cut her, then to Henry. He said, 'Don't, mother.' I said I must and did cut him. Then I went to Bill. He was fast asleep. I turned him over. He never woke. I served him the same." Entering the next bedroom, she continued, "Harriet and George were awake. Harriet struggled very much after I cut her and gargled for some time. I then lay down and did myself. I can't tell you what occurred for some time after that, till I seemed weak and found myself on the floor. That nasty great black cloud was gone." Subsequently, she realized the gravity of her actions, witnessing her children covered in blood. Unable to call out due to her partially severed windpipe, she hung a blood-soaked pillow out the window to attract attention. Mary Ann's trial in August 1854 hinged on the question of her sanity. Did she commit the act in a fit of madness, or was her crime premeditated and intentional? The crucial inquiry was whether she was mentally disturbed or consciously malevolent. The defence enlisted the expert of Dr. Forbes Winslow, then referred to as an alienist, a term for psychiatrists during that era. Dr. Winslow diagnosed Mary Ann with temporary insanity, attributing it to brain disease aggravated by the stress of tending to her ailing children. He contended that these factors had driven an otherwise rational and loving mother to commit this heinous act. In contrast, the prosecution argued that the crimes were premeditated. A will, discovered mere hours before the murders, indicated Mary Ann's intention to bequeath her jewellery and valuable items, including a silver teapot and 2 brooches from Queen Victoria and the Queen of the Belgians, to her eldest daughter, Mary. The motive, as revealed during her custody, seemed rooted in jealousy and revenge, fearing separation from her children due to an impending agreement. The prosecution also presented evidence of Mary Ann's alleged adultery to paint her as immoral and depraved. The judge endorsed this perspective, instructing the jury to find the defendant guilty. Despite this, influenced by the testimony of Forbes Winslow and other lunacy experts who maintained that Mary Ann had been driven to madness by her congested brain, the jury rendered a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. The media largely concurred with the decision, questioning the credibility of a mother committing such acts outside of a frenzied state. Following the trial, Mary Ann's house became an eerie attraction, capitalising on Victorian fascination with murder, especially one with a royal connection. Mary Ann spent the remainder of her life at Bethlehem Mental Hospital, commonly known as Bedlam, where she was described as a non-violent, quiet resident. Experiencing fits or strokes leading to paralysis, she passed away in 1861. During the inquest, a Bedlam doctor attributed her paralysis, eventual demise, and insanity to brain disease, affirming its role in the tragic events 7 years earlier. Mary Ann had asserted that if Dr. Izzard had seen her that fateful Friday and provided the medicine that alleviated her headaches and the overwhelming cloud in her brain, the murders would never have occurred. Nearly 2 decades after the horrific incident, the Esher tragedy maintained its allure. The Birmingham waxworks recreated the murder scene in graphic detail, allowing visitors to gaze upon wax figures of the 6 children, each with a slit throat and gore on the little waxen faces, gore on the sheets. A figure of the blood-stained murderess, adorned with label around her neck, served as a chilling reminder of her intimate royal connection.